A Merric's Tale by Margs Murray. Read to you today by Margs Murray. Chapter 2. Since Farts Were Cool. My mattress spring sagged and jolted with the same throbbing pace as my budding headache. Even with my limited hours of sleep, I knew enough to roll over to escape the impending feet from hitting me. I pulled my comforter up over my head. "Go away, Sasha." "No can do, Waverly." Sasha flopped down next to me and pulled back my blanket. "Your dad is asleep at the kitchen table, and your mom is a zombie baking a cake, and you sent me a 3 a.m. SOS, so I'm not leaving until you tell me what's up." I had sent Sasha, my best friend since farts were cool and birthday parties included pony rides, a text when things went from weird to downright crazy, but the sun was barely up. I yanked my blanket back. "It's still too early to do this." "What are you talking about? It's 2 in the afternoon." I bolted upright. The day was half over. "Come on! You've got to be kidding me." "Nope." Sasha held up her phone. I jumped out of bed and ran to my dresser and grabbed my Barton High t-shirt and my favorite cut-off shorts. I rushed to dress in my closet. "And if you think that's bad, buddy, you should see the huge zit on your chin," Sasha called through the door. My fingers grazed my chin and touched the mountain of gross that had erupted dead center. Oh well, I had bigger things to worry about. "So what gives?" I joined her back on the bed. "Oh, so much, Sasha. Way so much." It had been a tense ride home. My father filled the car with the 947 reasons why going with Bullard would not happen. Dad complained about Bullard and his audacity to think he could waltz in here and fill my head with nonsense about Grandma's disease and being the most important man in America. If this wasn't bad enough, Dad practically called me a child, unqualified to make the decision to go off with some strange man, relative or not. Meanwhile, Grandma kept repeating I had to go, that the crown depended on it. By the time we pulled into our gravel driveway, I'd had my fill of talking about the situation. First chance, I ran to my room. After the claims Bullard made, the internet had to be full of information on him. From the comfort of my bed, I fell into a rabbit hole of research for Uncle Bullard, or rather, Bullard trips. And, of the 54,600 hits, I found nothing related to my uncle. I searched images and found pictures of cylinder barriers and boats. I typed different spellings and combinations like Bullard Trips, Bully Trip, Bully Bullard, Bullard Industry, and Trips Industries. Unless my uncle owned a Hungarian clothing line, he remained untraceable. Hours later, and one thing became clear to me. Bullard Trips did not exist on the internet. Weirded out, I was ready to call a truce with my dad to talk about Bullard's lack of cyber footprint when Grandma showed up at my door, all smiles and happiness. "Come with me, little princess," she said, waving her hand for me to follow. "I have to talk to Mom and Dad," I told her. Refusing to take no for an answer, she shook her head and grasped my hand. In the dimly lit hallway, Dad's upset voice traveled under the door and through the keyhole. "I never liked him," Dad protested. "Always feared the day would come when he'd expect us to hand over our kid. He recognizes she's special, and he plans on using her somehow." This confused me. Dad guessed Bullard would want to take me someday? Why? He never voiced this concern to me. Also special? Me? I had no special anything. My grades averaged an A-, my artwork so-so, my singing voice appealing but not exactly great. My driving skills acceptable, or at least not dangerous. I had no special abilities, so what did he mean? My hand raised to knock on my parents' door, but Grandma pulled my arm and put the finger of her free hand to her lips. "Shh," and we continued to her room. My parents had filled Grandma's room with the things we'd hoped she'd remember. Pictures of my mom as a child, Grandma singing on the stage, a photo from her wedding day. A portrait of Grandma as a little girl caught my eye. She was sitting on her front porch with her parents and her brother. Bullard used to look so normal. All of them did. I picked it up. "He died in the war," Grandma said, and she took the framed picture and placed it back on her dresser. "My real brother is Michael." "Well, then I definitely shouldn't go off with a stranger," I told her in jest. Bullard may be a serial killer for all we know. Oh, no. You will go like I told you earlier. Bullard would never hurt you or our family. He can't. It's against the rules. Oh, he can use his powers, but he can't hurt you. He needs you to go with him, and so do I. It is your destiny, child. Just like it was my destiny. Grandma led me to the little ottoman next to her rocking chair, where I had spent so much time with her growing up. I sat down. Oh, I don't know about that, Grandma. I mean, I've college coming up. Young princess, don't go doubting me now, she said, sitting in her chair. She placed her hand on my shoulder, and I looked up into her silver eyes. I couldn't imagine how lonely it was for Grandma in her world of fantasy. I love you, I said. Now, I will tell you a story. She pulled my head onto her knee and ran her fingers through the curls of my hair. I left too, I did, when I was young and beautiful like you. Believe it or not, yes, even I was once young. My parents, like yours, were deeply in love, but, unlike your parents, mine never made time for their children. So, most of my youth, it was just Michael and me. It broke my heart when he went to war. My only friend gone. Without him, I was so lonely. Bullard showed up one day out of the blue, and I thought, he's returned. Only it wasn't my brother. When he offered to take me to see America, I said yes, despite my misgivings. You too must go. This is how you become a princess. I recognized a half-truth to her story. Grandma had left home right after her brother went to war. The family went to church, but Grandma, who was only 18 at the time, had claimed she felt sick. When they returned home, she'd gone, off to lands unknown to live her dream of being a folk singer. A neighbor saw her performance poster a few years later, and word got back to them. But for so many years, they didn't know what had happened to her. Lothair stole every single dance. So handsome. Grandma often spoke of Lothair, her delusional love, and the Prince of France. She continued, You'd be surprised how many princes aren't handsome. When I arrived at court, I thought I'd see so many handsome princes, but now the Prince of France and the Prince of Denmark were dashing, but the rest were hideous. The Prince of England had a wide red face, and it was always shiny. Most days he looked more like a melon than a royal. The Russian Tsar had the most crooked nose that turned to the left and the right in a zigzag. I don't think he could breathe out of it. Imagine the snoring. The Prince of France, though, he was something special. Everyone believed he had his eye on Mary Laurel, but no, it was me. Everyone was jealous of me that night. Who wouldn't be with that prince? He had a wave to his hair, so fashionable, so giving, so kind. You believe me, don't you? I nodded to her, and she added, He presented me with a gift. Do you want to see it? Yes, I said, and she left me sitting on the ottoman. Grandma opened the jewelry box on her dresser and plowed around for her piece. Years ago, Mom had snuck all of Grandma's real jewelry out of the house and left behind only some cheaper odds and ends. A few pendants, a pair of knockoff earrings, a bracelet, and several rings. Anything of value was safely in a bank deposit box. Over time, I had added costume pieces to her collection to sparkle things up and enhance story time. Grandma always knew better, but appreciated the additions. It's not here, she said. No, Grandma, it's okay. Wait, I remember, she said, and she turned and went to the closet. She fished her hand into her winter coat and took something out. This was new. Never had Grandma gone to search for jewelry in her closet. Is everything okay? She returned to my side, broad smile across her face. She extended her hand to me and placed a wad of used tissues and syrupy cough drops in my hand. Gross. This was the first time Grandma had ever done anything, well, so mentally unwell. Everything always had a small amount of logic, but this, it made little sense. I discreetly held my hand over the trash can when I noticed something round and hefty in my palm. Hesitantly, I opened the napkin. There I found a ring with a large green emerald, a perfect circular gem set in exquisite gold. The quarter-sized stone had a dull shine, and while I didn't know much about gems, I guessed it might be a real emerald in need of cleaning, an antique. I turned it in my hand. overcome with a feeling of dread. If real, I had thousands of dollars in my hand, even more. Grandma, where did you get this? I told you, the Prince of France. He gave me the ring and necklace on the road. I can't find the necklace. You'll find it and bring it back to me. Grandma, what? I had no clue what she was talking about. You will. The fortune-teller told me all those years ago, Grandma said with an unusual intensity. She squinted her eyes, and she had the look of a person remembering information from years past. The fortune-teller said you'd understand. She said you'd find a cure. You'd go and find a cure. Death will die again, that's what she said. I must go behind the shadows and death will die again. Death will die again, a cure. What, Grandma? She said you would find a cure for me. For your illness? There couldn't be a cure. This made no sense. A cure? There's a cure? What are you talking about? She gazed directly into my eyes and placed her hands on my shoulder. Oh, when will this war be over? What war, Grandma? Of all of her years of stories about Prince Lothair and the royal kingdom, not once had she mentioned this ring, a necklace, or a cure. Heck, Grandma barely even acknowledged her illness. Where? What am I supposed to do? Her eyes were clear and open. She said you'd find the cure, and I would be better. She said, find the necklace, find the words. Words? What words? Like a formula for medicine or something? I asked. This made me pause. Could this be true? At that moment, the sad, hopeful, and insane part of my brain lit up. I'd risk anything to cure Grandma. My father had warned me for years not to buy into someone else's crazy, but here I was in the dangerous territory of believing Grandma. Grandma shook her head. Find the necklace, find the words, she repeated. She took my face in her hands, and in those eyes I saw the person I hadn't seen in years. Be good, sweet child, be good. Don't make shadows, please, please. Don't make shadows, don't make shadows, don't make shadows. I won't, I promise. My voice shook from her intensity. She let go of my face, and like a cloud blocking the sun, her eyes clouded, and she was gone again. What was I saying? Oh, yes, oh, yes. The prince danced with me all night. I'd been poor my whole life. I wanted to be special. And then he'd mentioned marriage, and he was so charming, so rich, how could I resist? We'd even made plans, but when Mary Laurel fell in love with Hector, I knew I could not. The mirror doesn't lie, you know. She took one look at me and said, You look worried. What's the matter? Nothing. I put the ring safely into my little pocket of my PJs. I love you. And I love you. I headed to my bedroom and sent Sasha the SOS. Wow, that's a lot to digest. Sasha pulled a thread on my comforter. What should I do? I handed her the ring. I mean, it's crazy, right? Fortune tellers, rings, medical formulas, my uncle's offer. Did I step into a different dimension or something? It can't be real. Sasha gave me a nervous laugh. I mean, it's nuts. The ring's probably a piece of junk, right? What did your mom say? I didn't want to go to them until I wrapped my brain around what it means myself. Oh, and got your opinion. Sasha stood up. Well, it is the one that matters. Okay, then. She turned the ring over in her hand. What we know. First, Lothair isn't real. Second, psychics are fakes. But third, everyone makes shadows. They're a side effect of light. Now, Lothair and Leo both begin with L. Can't just be a coincidence, right? Your grandma most likely replaced your grandpa in her memory with the prince because Leo was so wonderful when he was alive, it was like he was her prince. I'm not so sure, I replied, certain that wasn't the case. She never described them both the same way. Lothair was tall, with jet black hair, and a rather impulsive romantic. Grandpa was short, with dirty blonde hair, and one of the most down-to-earth people you'd ever meet. No, I'm sure I'm right. Sasha put the ring down on my nightstand and picked up my framed picture of my grandparents. Besides, not romantic? You've got to be kidding me. Your grandparents have the most amazing love story. It's like out of the movies. The great Helena Trips looks out into the audience one hot August night. As she sings the first words of Big Rock Candy Mountain, she sees a handsome stranger in the crowd. Their eyes lock. He stands and moves to the stage. Helena, lost in the moment, jumps straight from her performance into the music pit, flooded with broken fiddles and harmonicas. Helena fights her way from her pit of despair and into her true love's arms. Not exactly, I said, pulling at a random loose string on my pillowcase. No way my grandma jumped into a pit of musicians. It goes something like they caught each other's eyes, and Grandpa stayed in his seat until everyone had left. The ring is a sign of his love, she replied. Grandma never made it big as a singer. Grandpa was a farmer, Sasha. He had no money for a ring like that. He saved for years and begged, stole, and borrowed to buy Helena the ring she deserved. Grandpa Leo loved his Helena more than anything, but this couldn't be true. I'm telling you, if they had that kind of money, they would have put a new roof on the barn. Sasha, ever the romantic, ignored my rational truths, put the frame back, and picked up the other photo from my nightstand, a picture of my parents. And how can we forget the love story of Simone and Matthew? Mashed potatoes piled high on his plate. Unsuspecting Matthew Wilson enjoyed his college cafeteria lunch when, hark, a fair maiden enters the arena and... Arena, Sasha, please, they're my parents. I hit Sasha with a pillow. Sasha pantomimed pain, recovered, and then jumped to my bed. She held her hand to her heart and continued undeterred. Their eyes met. Love, hypnotic, pure, unending love, a little over the top. I threw down the pillow and jumped up on my bed, straining to wrestle my parents' college photo out of her hands. Good-looking girl, nice-looking guy see each other, inseparable ever since. Sasha, being nearly 5 inches taller than me, easily swatted my hands away. I like my version better, Sasha said matter-of-factly. I wonder what your story will be. I bet it will be just as romantic. Romantic? I've got enough to worry about, thank you. I picked up the ring from where Sasha had set it on the nightstand. You aren't taking this seriously. Not really, Waverly. It's some old knockoff ring. Sasha, I'm serious. The ring is something. You should see what your mom says. I mean, for all you know, it's your mom's ring and your grandma picked it up and put it in her old coat pocket. Ha! How much do you think teachers make? I Googled this for hours last night. If it's real, it would be worth at least 10 grand. I found a huge ring like that valued at over 6 figures. If it's fake, it's the best-looking knockoff I've ever seen. Come on. As best friends, we agreed to tell things straight, right? Sasha said, and I nodded. We had agreed to always tell each other how we felt, no matter what, and if that meant telling each other unlikable truths, so be it. The next part would be unpleasant, and I braced myself for the blow. First, the internet is great and all, but I'm not so sure even a week of searching would make you a gem expert. Second, it's like you want to believe it's real, because if it's real, it's further proof something else is going on with Helena, and that is why you didn't ask your parents, Sasha said. No, I said, slipping the ring back in my pocket. I already know something other than Alzheimer's going on with Grandma. Okay, then ask your parents. And while you're at it, do me a favor and put them out of their misery and tell them you aren't going. I nodded. I needed to tell them. I did. But that little part of my brain that understood the existence of zebras and lottery winners told me to hold to the impossible for a little longer.